Today's a feast day of St. Nicholas, and sometimes St. Nicholas is associated with Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is sometimes associated with Jesus, and they mix both things together, and in the end, both are ridiculous. This is something which happens on a regular basis. I know a story of a friend. I'm not going to say names, but he'd made this deal with his dad. He says, "Dad, this year we need to catch Santa Claus." So what they did was he talked to his dad about it, which was obviously a genius idea, and they decided to put a movie camera, right in front of the Christmas tree. So what they did is they set up the Christmas tree. Then they set up the camera and they said, "Okay, now we're going to catch him." And he let his dad be in charge of it. He says, "Dad, before you go to bed, you just push the record button. Just like push the button." So the dad, he went there and he pushed the record button. And, the following morning, they saw on camera how the tree was there. And then at one point, a red flash went through the camera. All the presents were there. Amazing. So what had actually happened? Well, his dad had covered the camera with a red piece of cloth, turned off the camera, filled everything with presents, and then turned on the camera with the red piece of cloth in front of it, and then removed the cloth. Amazing. This kid was convinced that he had caught Santa on photo, and I think it fooled him for a little bit longer. Not that much longer. In this case, this young man, he still believes in Jesus Christ, but a lot of times people, because they associate Christmas with Santa Claus and with these type of things, that they say, look, it's all hogwash, made up, fairy tales, end of story. This is a sad reality, but I think it's helpful that today, at least this year, it coincides that the gospel of the readings for Advent actually coincides, and I think can be helpful for recognizing the legitimacy of the Catholic claims to miracles. It's interesting because it comes out in the gospel today how Jesus was curing those who were deformed, those who were missing, who were not whole. He made them whole. This is referring to what is undeniably a miracle. In other words, you had the cojo de calanda, in other words, some guy missing a leg. And Jesus comes and he has a leg on him afterwards. Look, that's not a Photoshop. Your man was missing a leg and then he had a leg. That's a miracle. Do you think that a lot of people would have seen this? Yes. It wasn't something that was done in the secret. He did these miracles. And it's interesting. One of the things I think is really helpful on a historical level to remember is that even the Jews, even them in the Talmud, Babylonian Talmud, they say that Jesus did miracles. They didn't deny that he did miracles, and lots of them. They just said it was by the power of Beelzebub. They said it was by the power of Satan, but they didn't deny the fact that he did miracles, which is a very important historical detail. In other words, he did miracles. These things happened. Another, I think, important detail is that typically when someone does a magic trick, I've noticed this as a kid, this is why I stopped doing magic tricks. Whenever you do a trick, let's say you have a card and suddenly it disappears, and then it appears again. If you do that, they'll ask you, try it, you'll see how it's true. Can you do the trick again? Why do they ask you to do it again? Because they want to catch you. They want you to do the trick, and they want to got ya. They're there, they're going to catch it. You never do the same trick twice in front of the same audience at the same moment. You might be able to do it later on when they're off balance, but you don't do it the same exact trick twice in a row. Today, both miracles happen today. He actually does the same trick twice. He does the multiplication of bread, because on one occasion it says that there was 5 loaves and 2 fish. Today it says how there's 7 loaves and some fish. It's important to recognize that this is the only miracle that happens in every single gospel, including the Gospel of John, and in the Gospels, at least in the Gospel of Mark, it happens twice, in case there was any doubt that there were 2 different miracles. And it's good to remember that they had also been 3 days without eating. Sometimes people say, oh, they decided to share. They're with Jesus for a long time, and Jesus, he brought 5 loaves and 2 fish, or 7 loaves as happens today, and then they became generous because they were with Jesus. They decided to share. This is ridiculous to begin with, because look, after 3 days, you usually eat the extra stuff that you have. I don't know about you guys, but I know amongst the brothers, if there's 3 days and there's after 3 days of having the refrigerator empty and being hungry, you go to the shop, you buy food. And if you had anything under your bed, you take it out. At least for yourself. You don't have this huge stash of food after 3 days without eating. And I think it's also important that there was the miracle that happened for the canonization of Saint John of Saint Matthias. There's also a Saint John of Saint Matthias who is John of the Cross. He changed his name, but there's another John of Saint Matthias. You can check it, look it up on Google. But the miracle for his canonization was multiplication of rice. It was in the 20th century, and it was in Spain during the war. And there was a moment when the rice that was supposed to be enough rice, I think it was a very small amount of rice. We're talking about a big cup of rice. That's what there was. Today, the brothers, we actually providentially ate rice. And we used a cup and a half. And one of the conclusions was that a cup and a half is not enough for 4 people. So imagine having a cup and a half, or however much. It could have been 3 cups, whatever you want. Not enough for over 100 people. They all ate. Moreover, it was put into a bowl, and at one point they said, St. John of St. Matthias, help us, because there wasn't enough. And they said it out loud, so everyone knew who the saint was in this occasion. And the rice they boiled the rice, it was condimented. They just started to serve people out of the boiling pot. So that was pretty mysterious, boiling pot. They started to serve it directly out of it using what I imagine to be a sort of ladle with holes in it. They were serving one person, another person, another person. They served over 100. And the rice was condimented. They didn't have anything else to get. They had no other. It was a very poor situation. And they served over 100 people out of the rice. And a lot of people, even though they were very hungry, they all got what they wanted, but they actually kept some of the rice. They were so freaked out by it. They kept the rice. So the 20 or however many years later, when they talked about this miracle, it's I still have the rice today. As a proof that it was a miracle. As a proof that God continues to look out for his poor. I say all these things in contrast to St. Nicholas, in contrast, above all, to Santa Claus. Because it's true that we grow out of Santa Claus, that we grew out of thinking that it's done by this mysterious figure who comes down chimneys. I would say that's something you grow out of, but you don't grow out of Christ. The more you study Christ, the more you study his miracles, you realize that it's solid and that's a reality, and it's not something, we don't believe in fairy tales. And it's not because our dad tricked us by putting a red cloth over the camera. So as we continue with this Christmas season, in our case, as we continue with this Mass, we're going to beg the Lord to increase our faith, to help us to recognize his miracles, to recognize that he's not tricking us, and that not only his birth, but his death and resurrection are also for real. Amen.